All right, today lesson 37, unit 9 is solving systems of equations. I know it says by hand here. I'm going to show you how to do it both by hand and using matrices in your calculator. So whichever method you're more comfortable with, you'll be able to do. So the solving by hand should be something that's familiar. You've done this in Algebra 2. So there's two different ways that you can solve by hand. You can do by substitution, which I'm going to do on this problem, and by elimination, which I will do. It's the same problem, so I'm going to show you how to do it both ways, and then I'll show you how to do it by matrices as well. Okay, so by substitution, which you've got four different spots here. You're trying to solve for both x and y. So you've got two x's, you've got two y's. What you want to do is get one of them in one of the two equations by itself. In this case, getting this y by itself would be the easiest. So if I take this 2x and subtract it to the other side, I would have y is equal to negative 2x plus 5. I would then take that and substitute that in for the y into the other equation. Make sure you plug it into the other equation. So you'd have negative 4x plus 6 times negative 2x plus 5 is equal to negative 2. And then just do the algebra. So negative 4x minus 12x plus 30 is equal to negative 2. So if I combine those two together, I'll get negative 16x. Subtract the 30 to the other side, and I'll get negative 32. And then divide by negative 16. So you get x is equal to 2. I would then take that and put that back into either this equation, or this equation. Doesn't matter which one. They'll all give you the same answer. So I'm going to plug it into this one here. So that would be negative 4 plus 5, which would be 1. So the solution to that would be 2, 1. That's substitution. Now, substitution is nice if you have a variable here that has a coefficient of 1. It makes it decently easy. Most of the time, I would not solve them by substitution. I would either do it by elimination, which I'm going to show you on this one, or by matrices. Okay, in elimination, it's exactly what it sounds like. I want to get rid of one of the two variables, either x or y. And you're going to do that by taking these two equations and adding them together. Now, if I add them together, I don't eliminate any one of the variables. So what I want to do is I want to take one of the two lines, or possibly both lines, and I want to multiply by a number so that it is the same number but opposite sign as the other line. So for instance, if I were to take this line and multiply it by 2, this would be 4x and this would be negative 4x. Add those together and you get 0. Or I could take this line and multiply it by negative 6, which would make these two be opposites of each other, and that would eliminate that variable. I'll show it to you both ways. Oops. So if I take that, multiply by 2, that's going to give me 4x plus 2y equals 10. And if I add the two lines together now, that gives you 0. 6y plus 2y is 8y, and negative 2 plus 10 is 8. Y is equal to 1. Take the 1, plug it back into the original equation, and you will have 2x plus 1 is equal to 5. Subtract by 1, that gives you 4. Divide by 2, that gives you 2. X is equal to 2. Same answer that I got in the last one. Or if I take, instead of doing that, if I take this line and I multiply it, take this line here and multiply it by negative 6, that'll give me negative 12x minus 6y equals, and always make sure that you multiply that by the number as well, negative 30, and then list this one right below it. Add the two lines together. Negative 16x is equal to negative 32. X is equal to 2. Plug it back in, you'll get y is equal to 1. Okay, so no matter how you end up doing that, whether you do it by substitution on the previous page or by elimination here, you'll get the same answer. Okay, let me show you how to do this with matrices. Okay, honestly, for a 2x2 equation, I don't typically do them with matrices. I would do them either by substitution or elimination personally. I just think it's a little bit faster. But here is the idea with matrices. You can go, there's some notes on Canvas that go through how to set all of these things up and why it works the way it does in a little bit different words than I'm going to probably say here. So you're going to make 3 matrices. You're going to make the coefficients that are in front of your variables here, which is what coefficients are. So 2, 1, -4, and 6. And then the variables, like this. If I were to take these two and multiply them together from what we did in lesson 36, and you circle these going across and you circle that going down, you would have 2 times x plus 1 times y, which is 2x plus y, and -4x plus 6y, which is that line right there. Okay, that's going to equal those two numbers there. Okay, now there is no such thing as division of matrices. So what we do is something that's called an inverse. And what an inverse does is when you have a matrix, let's call it A, and you multiply it by its inverse, you get what's called the identity matrix, which is the same thing as basically like when we're doing regular numbers, like multiplying by 1. Okay, so multiplying a matrix and its inverse gives you the identity matrix, which, so let's call this matrix here A, call this matrix X, and call this matrix B. So if I have AX is equal to B, and I take on this side and multiply by the inverse, which means I need to do the same thing on the other side. Now notice the placement that I put in there. These two have to be right next to each other, and I can't stick it in between there. So because I wrote it in the front, I'm going to write this one in the front too. These two things multiplied together give you the identity matrix. And the identity matrix, when you multiply it to a matrix, is just that matrix. And this is what I'm trying to find here. I'm trying to find what I want this basically by itself so that I know what X and Y are equal to. So by taking these two matrices, putting them into the calculator, and multiplying the inverse of that times that, you're going to get what X and Y are. All right. So if you don't know how to put matrices into the calculator, go back, look at lesson 36. It goes through the directions on that. All right, I'm going to clear my matrices out. Second plus, number 2, number 5, delete, delete. Go into the matrix menu. Type in your A matrix. Type in your B matrix. Okay, quit. So now I want to do A inverse. So if I go to, matrix A, then I'm going to hit the x to the -1 button here, which will give me the inverse, times matrix B to 1, just like we got in the other ways when we did it by hand. Okay, let me show you another example here. I'm going to do this one being 3 equations and 3 unknowns. Let's do this with matrices. All right, when something's missing, we're going to put a 0 in that spot. All right, so this case, we're going to have 4, 0. Make sure you put the negative with this, -1. 8, 5, -1, -1, -1, 5. Okay, if you want to try to do this one by hand, you can look on Canvas or you can ask me and I can go through it with you. Honestly, I would not do this one by hand. I would just do it with matrices. Okay, X, Y, Z in this case, we've got 3 here. 7, 0, 6. Let's make sure we got all of our negatives. So there was a negative and a negative there, 2 negatives there. Got that. Looks like my numbers are okay. Okay, no negatives on the other side. All right, let's call this A, call this X, call this B. So I am going to do A inverse times B again. Let's clear out our matrices. Put this one in. And again, like I talked about in the last lesson, the big thing is don't type in any wrong numbers. You type in one wrong number, the whole thing's going to be wrong. Make sure the negatives are all there, so that looks good. Second matrix B. Okay, those are all good. Okay, now I already have A inverse B typed in here. If I just hit enter, it's going to give that to me again, or I can arrow up to this here and do that so I don't have to retype the whole thing in again. Or you can just go and retype it again. Okay, and there we go. So X is 2, Y is -3, and Z is 1. We're going to write that as a point. So 2, -3, and 1. Okay, so that's how you solve systems of equations, either by hand or by calculator. So it's lesson 37. Let me know if you have any questions.